Back from the weekend for the Arizona Coyotes, we have another rumor roundup. We're going to talk about what's going on with Jakob Chychrun and trade rumors. What teams are potentially interested in the Coyotes defenseman? Plus, how do these hockey leagues have to address or need to address better these issues of race and racism? All that talking on this episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonia. Carl Pavlik is right beside me on this Monday. It is January 24th. Getting close to the end of January already. I feel like this month has already gone by pretty fast. The last couple of days, maybe not so much, but I think it's been pretty good. But we've got a lot to talk about on this episode. As we mentioned, we're talking some Jakob Chychrun trade rumors, and all how that's going to go down because Carl, it's heating up.
It is. We are definitely seeing more. I don't know if GM Armstrong is any closer to actually pulling the trigger. I think there's always been a question of, is he just listening to offers or is he pursuing offers? Everyone kind of seems to settle on he's just listening to offers, but is he going to get one that moves the needle? That remains to be seen.
That remains to be seen because there have been a lot of people who have reached out in some ways saying like, all right, we'll give you first round pick and these couple players, and I'm just like, not good enough. Like, because we're talking Jakob Chychrun here. He's what, 24, right? 23? 20?
One of those two. He is 23, born March 31st, 98.
All right, so he's 23. And obviously he didn't have a good start to this season, but you seen what this kid is capable of, right? So like his value is still freaking there. Like you know what he's gonna do. So the Coyotes are gonna freaking make sure they get the most value out of this kid as much as possible, and that's why they're just listening to offers. If they find something that is actually intriguing, maybe they'll start actually truly listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it is the responsibility of every general manager to listen to offers for players. If teams are willing to send you stuff, then you should at least listen. I have not been impressed with what we've seen so far. I think the biggest trade that we've seen actual details emerge was a potential Florida. Looks like Merrick offered this one. Spencer Knight, Anton Lundell, and a first round pick, which I just need someone to explain to me where Ivan Prosvetov fits in with this trade for Spencer Knight, because I don't necessarily see the team acquiring a goaltending prospect like Knight when they already have a goaltending prospect. And a team like Florida, who's going to have a lot of trouble moving Knight, because let's be real, everyone knows that they're locked in with Sergei Bobrovsky long term because he signed a massive contract. He's playing better this year, so that kind of like puts the onus on them to keep him, which means like they're going to be shopping Spencer Knight anyways. So the Coyotes could probably get him for much cheaper than a Jakob Chychrun, and I'm not too excited about Anton Lundell. Very intriguing prospect. Definitely would love to go deeper into that, but it doesn't move the needle for me. Like none of these trades have really.
No, it haven't. And you know, I think we even had other hosts, other Locked On hosts reach out and say, hey, I talked about this on the show, or here's what we would offer for Jakob Chychrun. And I'm looking at Chris Maselli over at Locked On Avalanche said he proposed this on today's episode, and this was back in 10 days ago that he sent this to me. He says Coyotes get the Avalanche 2023 first round pick, Shane Bowers and Andrei Burakovsky, while the Avs get Jakob Chychrun.
Which again, no, I think the Avalanche, like betting on any of their picks, they're going to be late round picks. So much less production. If this team is looking to rebuild, like getting a late first round pick is nothing. Like I
Exactly.
don't see much in that. Um, in credit to people like the Lockdown Avalanche hosts for sending us that, and I mean this Florida proposition, they're better than what you see on like an NHL trade board, like message board for a trade offer. They're still not great, and they still don't have a good understanding of what the Coyotes' needs are. And to be fair, I don't know if the Coyotes really have a great understanding of what their needs are either. They're very early in the trade or in the rebuild process. Like the treatment of Prospetov, I think, has been very well and signals that they want to keep him around. So to me, that says like they're not looking for goaltending. So offering them goaltending just seems kind of productive.
Which was another one, and this one almost it seemed almost jokingly, but at the same time, it could you could take it as a somewhat serious deal, and that's one that like at least like a somewhat serious offer, and obviously not one that you take anyways, because we're talking about the same thing with how that goes, and that's when I tweeted out, hey, send us your offers to all the other Locked On hosts, and in response, I believe it was Jay Foster Locked On Blue Jackets sent back all of our second round picks and Jonas Korpisalo. And I'm like, you're still failing to realize here we don't need another goaltender.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to shout out Yotes Trade Central, who posted a tweet earlier today, just kind of recapping what we have. The Yotes are asking for first round pick, one top prospect, and another higher end player or second former first round pick. Um, he states that there's currently one package with the requirements, which I think we're getting rumors about. Florida and New York Islanders are named legitimately in the hunt. Boston's interested, as well as St. Louis, Anaheim, and LA. And I think those are all good fits for Jakob Chychrun as a player because I think he's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're good fits for the Coyotes with what they're at. And I don't buy the, well, there's a bunch of smoke, so there must be fire argument. I think that there's a bunch of teams that are swarming to give their best offer to Bill Armstrong to kind of see if they can move the needle, but
At this time,
I,
there is not enough not enough um, persuasion from any side, not or any kind of proposal that says, at least in our even in our perspective, that it's going to happen, that there's that we can actually accept this.
yeah, I mean, the GM Armstrong was able to get like gold for the Darcy Kemper trade,
Mm-hmm.
for the Aiden Hill trade, the Shane Gostisbehere trade. It was phenomenal. Like he seems like he knows how to make a trade, and these offers that I'm seeing, and we don't know what these offers are because it's all rumors. Nothing's for sure, but like they don't fit with what I think he wants the team to be doing right now.
No,
And I think part of that is just like everyone sees a great player like Chychrun, and they're like, okay, we're just going to offer our best thing and hope that that works. And unfortunately, just not too many people care enough about the Coyotes to actually like be researching what they think their needs are right now. Like, and so we're just seeing a bunch of offers that I'm just like not excited about at all.
no, not at all. And I think that's the thing too. Just thinking about all that, and we're just like, okay, we'll keep waiting. And that's what I
Yeah.
told last week on Lockdown NHL. And I'm like, listen, at this point, the guys are just listening because there is no serious offer at this point. Nothing that that intrigues us and intrigues the Coyotes in any way. And that's what we were just, and that's what we've been saying this entire segment. And it's like, are they probably going to move him? That's again remains to be seen. But if that right offer comes, you better bet Bill Armstrong is going to take whatever that right offer is to help with this rebuild because, and again, you mentioned it, you mentioned that he's done like he got an A+ this offseason with how he made his acquisitions and trades.
Yep.
Like he did phenomenal in how he did that, and I got and there's a reason why I called him Bargain Bill because he just freaking knew how to make a deal.
And honestly, like I kind of think that a trade works better for a team like Anaheim or Los Angeles, who aren't going to be front and center for a story like this. But Chychrun's got years on his term, so like it can go to a team with a more long-term prospect. LA and Anaheim are further along in the rebuild, so they have younger players that are developed. Like when I look at like the Florida Panthers or the New York Islanders, I'm just like, really? Like the timeline doesn't really seem to fit, which is why the prospects being offered also don't fit. Like this is just a very interesting situation because we don't often see a young star defenseman being traded with 4 seasons left on a contract. And no one seems to know how to make that work with a trade proposal. At least on Twitter, I'm sure actual GMs are adequate at their jobs. Let
Let's I
me
mean
say
let's
that.
let yeah let's put this straight and forth. Armchair GMs in on hockey Twitter. I nothing 100% against you guys. I love some of you guys, but you're not actual general managers who can make a
Yeah.
good deal.
Yeah. And honestly, let's be also fair. Some of you are better than actual GMs in some of the moves they do.
Oh my god, true. Yeah.
But that's a low bar for hockey GMs. There's somewhere just like, how are you still in the league? But yeah, it's rumors. I just don't see much of it yet. But would it absolutely shock me if something happened by the end of the year? No, just because everyone's been talking about it. Would it shock me if nothing happens by the end of the year? No, because I think that's the right move to make anyways.
There's a there has been a shift in ideology on who has become untouchable for the Arizona Coyotes in the rebuild, from Jakob Chychrun to Clayton Keller.
Yeah.
Clayton Keller's proved himself at this point in the season to be untouchable, and like, all right, let's hear what the offers for Chychrun are.
Yeah. Which let's be perfectly honest. If Chychrun is untouchable or goes from untouchable to touchable after 30 games in a season, he was never untouchable. Like he had a slow start that I think everyone expected,
Because of the
but
change in in defensive personnel. But
change in defensive personnel, increased role, not having a long term like partner, like he played bad, and so that should have been expected. Like this shouldn't be a massive shift. I don't understand why people are thinking it is. I think it's purely from the buyer side. I think we are getting a rush from buyers who are looking to make something work.
exactly. Hey, we still got more to get to on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. We're going to talk about the teams going on here in the and just the league and just what's going on with some Coyotes players and all stuff like that in just a sec. But first, Carl's got a little special word.
That I do. And that's a special message from our friends at Built Bar. It's a new year, and that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure to include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolutions because they taste good. You want to eat them. Unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky, waxy, or taste like a chemical spill. Here's the thing about resolutions. You tend to give up on them pretty quickly once you start hitting adversity. So we're late in January, so I imagine a couple people are starting to give up on stuff. But you can change that around. Just grab a couple of Built bars, go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off, and get back on track with your resolutions. Just because you faltered a little bit doesn't mean that you failed. You have a full year ahead of you. So just get back at it. And that's built.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off.
Okay, let's get back here on Locked On Coyotes. Once again, Robyn Leonio and Carl Pavlik on this Monday. Let's continue to attend this episode. We were talking about Jakob Chychrun rumors. Before we get to our next segment, Carl, I want to go ahead and let's put it this way. And you were talking about what Yotes Trade Central wants, where it says the Coyotes want. What does the perfect package in your eyes look like?
Hmm. Perfect package in my eyes would be a first round pick, a center prospect, um, and probably another defenseman, a defensive prospect, because I think that the blue line is fairly weak. I don't think trading for a goalie prospect makes much sense. I think the Coyotes should be looking to improve in forwards, which they absolutely need, especially at center, and they should be looking to start re-securing their defense, which is also pretty important.
I'm with you on that. Although I would actually change um, the center prospect to a high level center roster player and a
Mm.
defensive prospect.
Gotcha. When I do say center prospect, I mean like maybe like last year of the junior, so like ready to make that leap now,
Fair
or
enough.
not necessarily now, next season, because I don't think really adding anything this season does much for anyone.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. But yeah, so that's roughly what we think. So to the Locked On NHL hosts out there who are listening to this episode as well, now is your time to send in your proposals. Now that you know what we want.
Yeah.
All right, though, let's get to the next bit of this episode. Something we're going to be talking about for the rest of this show, and that's to address something that we talked about earlier this year, Carl. Earlier this hockey season, and that's racism again. Racism in hockey.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate it has to come up again. In this case, it's another Coyotes prospect who was the target of racism. And this was late last week in Boko Imama, who was the target from a player on the San Jose Barracuda. That player on the Barracuda was suspended for 30 games, which, Carl, I will say before we get into anything, is while still could be better, is a landmark decision of a long-term suspension. Like think about how some of the stuff we talked about before, where it's like, oh, 5 games, 10 games, whatever. Like, come on, that's really 30 games. Okay, we're going in the right direction, but
Sure.
there's still more that needs to be done because here's the biggest problem: is it keeps happening.
Yeah. I'm. Let's be fair. You are correct. Compared to some of the other things we have seen, 30 games is a lot. Uh, but I see, just when I search Boko Imam, I see CTV News Montreal. Don't want to call them out specifically because I think there's a lot that we should really talk about with this suspension alone. AHL sends strong message on racism, suspends players 30 games for gesture against Boko Oman. Rafi Torres was suspended for 41 games for a hit,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that is the baseline for racism now. What is the most suspension you can get? Because that should be it. Like if we're talking about a Rafi Torres hit not belonging in hockey, racism absolutely does not belong in hockey at any level. So it should be more than that. I will credit CTV News Montreal for saying racism. I think a lot of the news articles, just looking at it,
They said
they
racial
say
gestures.
racial gesture, which is just the absolute dumbest thing I've
It's
ever heard in
dodgy
my life.
around it, and here was the thing: I went to school for journalism, and I took a look into the AP style book, and guess what? You can use racism if it's appropriate, and in this case, I believe it is appropriate.
Yeah. I didn't go to journalism school, so I don't know about that. But I did read manufacturing consent, and I know how the language that is used very much helps control the message. And the message that was sent was Christoph Haberik, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, did something that some people can be offended by. And we saw that in the next story with the ECHL team apologizing if people were offended from their player doing racist gestures. I I hate that language. I hate putting the onus on the people for reading it correctly as racist. And I think that's a problem. I agree that 30 games is more than we've seen previously. I still don't think is enough. I think it should be a lifetime ban. I do.
Yeah, it definitely should be because, and it because that truly sends the message that racism does not belong in the sport of hockey. It doesn't belong in sports. This doesn't belong in. Like, we shouldn't be. We should be way past this at this point.
Yeah. Racism is something where if it happens, it needs to be called out. It needs to be addressed. Because if we start by addressing behaviors, that is how people start changing their views on things. Because a lot of people will look to what they do and use that to determine kind of what they think. If someone is like, you know, I'm not allowed to do racism in public, uh, I'm not saying it's going to change their minds overnight, but it's going to, make it a lot harder for them to be in private thinking racist thoughts. Because if they know they can't do it in public, like that sends a message. People like to be at least somewhat, you know, congruent with their beliefs. They like to think that they are the type of person who acts in public the way they would in private.
Absolutely. I'm going to finish the thought I was just ready to bring up, but first I want to tell everybody about Bet Online, because Bet Online would like to wish you guys a happy betting New Year as we continue to march to the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action in 2022. New year, a new updated desktop and mobile website. Sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use that promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, so let's finish off this conversation that we just started regarding racism in hockey, Carl. And that is, so we mentioned the situation with Bokwe Mama and how that went down in the AHL. They did 30 games. The ECHL, in this case, with Jordan Subban, the offending player is currently suspended indefinitely pending investigation.
Yeah.
Um,
I was really excited until I saw pending investigation. I thought they just suspended him indefinitely. I'm like, yep,
I
that's what
know.
you do.
I know.
And then
I
I'm
was
like,
like,
oh, they haven't even investigated yet.
I saw that for a second. I was like, oh wait, really? It's like,
Yeah,
and now I wonder what the ECHL is going to do because the AHL at least set their benchmark on what they
yeah,
think is going to be the case, right? Now what happens from there, right? The ECHLs would at least do maybe the same or more
yeah,
because if this keeps showing up, and now the NHL, AHL, and ECHL, all hockey leagues for that matter, have a decision to make.
yeah.
How are they going to address this for now and for the future? Because obviously it's not stopping.
And I do think like the story we talked about prior was former Coyotes prospect playing in Europe. The NHL was kind of allowed to bury their heads a little bit with racism in hockey in Europe. It's unfortunate to say, but uh, we saw with the Hockey Diversity Alliance, they're allowed to just not care. But now it's come to the shores of North America. We've had two instances in the second and third league. Let's say his name. Jacksonville Iceman, horrible hockey name. Defenseman Jakob Panetta was the player who was indefinitely suspended. I think that he is probably going to get a worse suspension for two reasons. One of them I think is fair. The other is kind of, yeah. One, it just happened previously, so there's going to be an incentive to do something kind of severe because we do have two instances in a month.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I think ECHL players are more disposable than AHL players, just in terms of kind of where they're at in their career. I think if you go to an AHL player and you suspend him indefinitely, you're gonna get some coach or some development person who's gonna be like, arguing for that player, saying, look, you are going to ruin this guy's career, and he could potentially make it. A 25-year-old in the ECHL is never going to make it unless they're a goalie. So I think this is an unfortunate case of class and race coming together where I think the ECHL is going to make it easier to go harder on someone like Jakob Panetta. And I'm fine with that because it's bullshit. He should get suspended for long term. I think he should be suspended for life. But I do want to be very clear. I think the AHL should also have done that. I don't think it's fair that a player in a lower league is probably going to get a heavier sentence just because they are not as good at hockey as a player in upper league.
I
That's
am totally
yeah,
with you on that. Totally with you on that. And here's another thing too, why this one can also be longer is there's getting some even more vocal support on Jordan Subban's case, mainly because who his brother is. His
absolutely.
brother is PK Subban, the defenseman for the New Jersey Devils,
Yeah,
and PK Subban actually spoke out earlier, pretty
yeah,
much saying, "Hey, this ain't okay. We need that. There's like this is a problem across all of hockey, and it needs to be addressed now."
yeah. And I did take a lot of the language I said from players like PK Subban. Like they have brought up the fact that this is happening in high levels of hockey. I am going to them for talking points. Um, and I think it's again just kind of it's unfair to Boko that Jordan Subban is able to rally a really big cry because he has a brother in the NHL. I do not begrudge Jordan Subban for doing that in any way. I think he should be getting the message out there as much as possible. I just I just want to see something consistent across all leagues of hockey to make sure that this is punished severely in all cases. I think we have a good case of the ECHL one being a proper punishment, but it makes me all the more frustrated for the AHL one being, in my opinion, too weak.
Exactly, and the I think you know what annoys me the most out of all this is the statement that the NHL put out, because obviously because this was two events in the
Yeah,
lower leagues that happened in a span of 3 days,
yeah,
right? And the NHL did not say racism to start off, but they pretty much like we're working on to be an inclusive environment in this sport. The whole the hockey is for everyone mantra, all stuff like that.
yep,
And it's like what we're gonna do is we're gonna put out essentially educational materials to teach people. And I'm like, listen, NHL, like I love you, but like educational material ain't gonna do crap at this point. People are gonna be stupid and dumb.
yeah. Especially because, I mean, honestly, like this month we had the announcement that the Hockey Diversity Alliance tried to get NHL jerseys, were refused permission. We are not getting any kind of work on that end. And the educational materials. We saw that in the Chicago Blackhawks sexual assault investigation, where they're like, we're going to make people watch an hour video about how sexual harassment is bad. And it's like, A, you're not doing that already. I think every person I know who has ever had a job has had to watch that video. Why are you just now getting to it? And B, that's not enough. And you're not doing anything on all the other levels. You just put out a statement anytime something really big happens and you hope that's going to like put it like sweep it under the rug. And I think people enough people are getting very frustrated about it. The thing that bothers me most of all is this freaking weekend where we have two instances of highly reported instances of racism in hockey. We still see people say that there's not a racism problem in hockey. Like it's not isolated if that happened twice in the first month of the year. What are you talking about? I just it's frustrating at all levels, and I don't have faith that the NHL is going to be able to do anything about it because the NHL is bad at doing anything big like this.
Yeah. And I think the other annoying thing about all this is the fact that we wouldn't this wouldn't be as much of a talked about issue. And obviously, we talked about it because it was a former Coyotes prospect overseas in Europe. But it continues to happen in Europe, probably not talked about as much.
Yeah.
Because this happened twice in 3 days on North American soil, that is why we're all talking about this a lot more. And that's what gets me even more because we shouldn't have to.
Yeah. We also shouldn't have to see video, which we did in the Jordan Subban case, before people start believing it. Like, we shouldn't, like, if a player says something that there was like a person doing racist gestures, we should believe them. And I do want to highlight one thing. I talked about it on Twitter, and I actually mentioned it to you beforehand. In the ESPN article, it mentioned regarding the Jordan Subban incident that Subban's teammate Nico Blockman left the Stingrays bench to punch Panetta and was given a game misconduct.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Honestly, one of Panetta's teammates should have punched him in the face. I don't care what's happening, if they're your teammate or not. If someone's being racist on the ice in a setting where you are allowed to punch people because there is an accepted general liability for everything, sports are very particular. In hockey, I'm allowed to say this. If you see someone being racist on the ice and you are a player, very specific, punch them in the face. I don't care. I don't care if they're your teammate. I don't care if it's an opponent. I don't care if the whistle's one. Just fucking punch them.
Yeah, because worst thing you get is a game misconduct.
Although to be fair, the real test for the ECHL is going to be what do they do with Nico Blackman, because I would not be surprised if he gets a very severe penalty for leaving the bench to start a fight, because we have seen that before, and if he gets more severe than Panetta, which I
That is
think
gonna
is,
bring outrage. That is
yeah,
gonna bring some massive outrage.
but also you have to understand that is a very likely possibility. Like, if you are listening at home and you do not believe that punching a racist, leaving the bench to punch a racist is going to get more penalty than being racist on the ice, you're watching a different sport. I hope, I hope it doesn't. But hockey, professional hockey is just such a cluster. Sometime I'm like, they're gonna get Nico Blackman, or he's gonna be like blacklisted or something. Like, this kid's career is not gonna go well. But he did the right thing.
In the ideal world, let's say, just just for continuity purposes and how things went down in that case, Blackman gets like what, 2 game suspension just because it's like okay, we like what you did, but you know it's still you still left the bench and whatever.
Yeah,
Um, and Panetta gets banned for life. That's the ideal situation here.
honestly, yeah. Like, a game or two. Sure, you left the bench to start a fight. It should never be condoned, but the situation for it was
Called for.
understandable enough. Yes, called for. Um, and it's not like he took a stick to the face, which I probably would have done. Um, because we have seen hockey players just smack each other in the back of the head with a stick. Doesn't happen anymore, but for a racist, why not?
Especially
But
when the sticks are a lot more stiff.
yeah, yeah, now we'll break right now. Um, it's very frustrating. And I hope that the NHL, because this is all about the NHL. This didn't happen in the NHL, but it happened in their lower leagues that they are affiliated with their future players. Like, they need to make a serious statement about this. They need to do the things after they make the statement that moves us towards the place where we're not going to be seeing this. Um, and just everyone on Twitter, for the next year, you're not allowed to talk about how there's no racism in hockey. Just wait a year. If there's no more racism at the end of the year, we'll talk about it then. But there will be. But there's been 2 instances in a month. Just stop that talking point for a while.
Yep. Also to the NHL, if you really plan on taking it seriously, work with the Hockey Diversity Alliance. They're there for a freaking reason. Work with them.
Yeah. And to the Jacksonville Iceman, go fuck yourself. That was a horrible statement. Why the? I kid you not. Seeing a team in 2022 put out, "I'm sorry if you were offended" when their player did something racist on the ice, just absolute worst. What are
Yeah.
you doing?
San Jose
Fire that
Barracuda.
person.
San Jose Barracuda did a little bit better in that when their response with the Boca Mama one. When that was like uh when they pretty much said like that the offending player, I forgot it, like I'm banging on his name. You just said it. Pretty much just like that does not match up with our standards, whatever. Like
Christoph Haberick.
okay,
Again, apologies, Christoph. I don't want to mispronounce your name intentionally. I just think you're a shitty person. But yeah, it's always hard to make a statement about how someone on your team is garbage. But yeah, there's a right way and there's a wrong way, and people go to school to learn how to do the right thing. So, uh, yeah, Jacksonville, up your game. I'm sorry you had to make an emergency announcement about your player doing something racist, but be prepared for that kind of thing. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
I know. Anyways, though, we are out of time on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. Hope you guys like what you heard. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you yet to already. Leave us a good review if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube. Also, don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram @LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter @LO_Coyotes. I am personally at Robyn_Leano. It is Robyn with the Y_LEANO. Carl Pavlik is Carl Pavlik FFH. Interact with us, ask a question you might have, and we can answer right back or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.